Hi, Joy and Rob and Oliver. Hello, thank you for being here. I'm just starting early to give an opportunity to share around. So I'm starting. Hi, Kirsten. Hi, Kirsten. I'm starting at 8 o'clock. I guess I should have put it in the description. I'm starting at 8 o'clock. I'm just starting a little early to have the opportunity to share this around. Hello, Ray. Thank you for being here. John Michael Williams, thank you. I'm starting in a few minutes. I'm just using this opportunity to share the video around. Hello, Ray. Thank you for being here. John Michael Williams, thank you. Oops, yes. Hi, Jimmy. Hello, Rob MMT Head. Thank you for being here. I miss you, Jimmy. I'm just taking a couple of minutes to share this around. We will get started in a couple of minutes. Thank you for helping share it around. Darn. Okay. Hi, Jackie. Thank you for being here. What was I going to do? Here we go. All right, I have one more share to do myself, and then I'm going to get started. Miss Bolton, you can't be here. Go away. I like you a lot. I want you to see it fresh. So I'm teaching Regina on Tuesday. I look forward to hearing the status about the iPad. But I want to teach it to her fresh. So I don't want her to have an enormous spoiler before I do it. I'm pointing to her comment in her little profile picture right there. So as much as I like you, go away and give me a status with your iPad. So I'll see you on Tuesday. We'll talk. So I like you very much. You're a very nice person. Hi, Christopher. Thanks for being here. Okay. You're leaving. I'm leaving. All right. Thank you, Regina. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Let me know what's going on with the iPad. I hope you got it. We'll test it out as soon as you're ready. Let me know. You are my first priority for testing. And of course, I'm very much looking forward to doing this. So I will see you later. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Hi, Hapida. Okay, I think it is time to get started. Let me get my notes ready. Okay, thank you for being here. I give this lesson every week or so. So this is my latest iteration here. It is a work in progress. Hi, Stephanie. Thank you for coming. This is a work in progress. I have a lot to learn. The more I learn, the more infinite the questions get. But I'm going to try and see if we can get it, like I've reached the point where I have reasonable accuracy, but length is a real challenge. So tonight I'm going to see if I can try and start making some changes as it relates to length. So you'll let me know if you have any feedback. Of course, ask questions, but the one disadvantage is that Facebook doesn't allow me to see comments past like the previous 20 or something. So I'm going to plug through in 3 different parts, and then I'll address questions. And it would be helpful if there are good questions that I should be addressing, that if someone would copy it and be ready to paste it at the end of each section so I can address them. It is impossible to see stuff that's more than a few minutes old. So excuse me. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to do this in 3 parts. Jerry in Nebraska, thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing this around to groups of people who need to learn modern money. What I'm teaching is going to be relatively solid, but this is a work in progress as far as making this into, slickness and length. So here we go. Let's see what happens. So, what is modern money? Okay, so I'm going to start with an elevator pitch, and Ron Placone inspired me, pushed me to do this, and I'm glad that I have this because this is good. It's elevator pitch for modern money. What is modern money? Modern money, modern monetary theory, MMT, is the study of how our economy actually functions. Modern money shows why the powerful always get what they want, and why the people only get crumbs, nothing at all, or even less than that. Modern money shows exactly how we can get the programs that we need to survive. It also shows that our government can easily give us these things tomorrow if they wanted to. And they could have given us these things decades ago. Thank you, Jerry. Glad to hear about the volume. I've had some complaints in the past. Thank you. It also shows that our government can easily give us these things tomorrow and could have given them to us decades ago. The powerful have always known modern money for war and tax breaks. They just do it. But when it comes to healthcare and education and forgiving student debt and a job guarantee, they suddenly forget about MMT. Suddenly, it's how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? And this is how I summarize it up in sort of a snarky way. MMT for the rich, rugged neoliberalism for the poor. MMT for the rich, rugged neoliberalism for the poor. Hi, Trisha. Yes, get some sleep. So I've had a couple of complaints about volume. Some people are saying that it's fine. Some people are saying it's too low. There is nothing I can do aside from just, talking louder. And so hopefully you have headphones. Turn it up as loud as you can go. But I'm getting some complaints, and I'm also being told that it's okay. All right, so let's keep going. My role. This is a disclaimer. I need to be clear about my role. I am a student. Actually, Carrie, this is as loud as I can go. How does this sound to you? Because this is as loud as it's going to get. Hopefully, maybe you could use headphones or turn them up. If other people can say if this is a consensus, there is nothing that I can do. There's no volume control here. So I hope that something will work. All right, my disclaimer. I am a student. I am not a teacher. The teachers are the experts and the economists. My only job, my one and only job, is to introduce the concept of modern money and then pass you off to the experts. So I can unplug you from the matrix and then hold your hand while your eyes acclimate to the real world, and then it is time to let you go so you can learn from the experts. That's my only job. Once that happens, once you leave, then my job is done. Okay, well, let me see if I can jigger it this way. I don't know. Try one more thing. All right. Sorry, this is a little too complicated. It's really the best I'm going to be able to do here. All right. Okay. So my question is, why do we pay federal taxes? And all I can say is the answers that I normally get. I would get some answers from people that I'm talking with. But why do we pay federal taxes, and what are they used for? And the answer that I most often get is federal taxes are used to pay for infrastructure, to get us health care, and it should get those things, but it's actually used for war. And the answer is generally that it pays for things. It pays for these big programs. It should be used less for the military, should be used for healthcare, but it pays for things is the general answer. So we're going to set that aside, but we're going to come back to that. So where does money come from? Money comes from, first of all, we're only going to talk about electronic. Physical is important, physical bills and coins, that's important, but that's a very small part. So we're going to set that aside. Most of it's electronic, in a bank account, in a computer. So we're only going to talk about electronic money. Where does money come from? And the answer is the Federal Reserve. The answer is the Federal Reserve. It comes from the Federal Reserve, and then it goes to the state reserves, and then to banks, and then to us, to corporations, and then to our paychecks, and so on. But the Federal Reserve is at the control, is told to make the money, is told to do it, is triggered by the Treasury. The Treasury is triggered by a law that was just signed by the President, and that law was written by Congress. So the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, declares that the Congress is the only one that is allowed to create the money. And it goes through these steps to do it. Write a number into a bill. The Congress writes a number into a bill. It is signed into law by the President. Money is born. It exists because they want it to exist. It is no different than choosing to tick up the numbers on a scoreboard at a game. It is no different than a child drawing a $1 trillion bill onto a piece of construction paper. It exists because they want it to exist. It really is a game. It's a social construct. It's a decision. So we're going to set aside all of the possible alternate theories of the Federal Reserve, such as the banks are in charge of governments. The Constitution says that the banks are at the control of Congress, that Congress is in charge of the banks, Federal Reserve. That's what the Constitution says. Even if they're cheating, even if it's not true, even if it's reality that the banks are in charge, you can't fight the cheaters if you don't know the rules. So we are going to learn the rules tonight. Afterwards, you can be as skeptical as you want to be. You should do your homework and determine what's really happening. But the rules say, the Constitution says that the Congress is in charge of the Federal Reserve. Okay. So, one more time. Congress writes a bill into law. It is signed by the President. That triggers the Treasury, which triggers the Federal Reserve. That money is created by the Federal Reserve by ticking up a number in a spreadsheet. That money is distributed to the state reserves, and then it goes to companies and the people. And there's also the federal budget, so that's part of the process too. But just for simplification, we're going to say it comes from a law. So I'm asking you to have an open mind while we're talking tonight. Again, be skeptical when we're done. But while we're talking, I need you to have an open mind. That is how I teach. So the Congress, according to the Constitution, is the monopoly currency issuer. They are the only ones in the world that are allowed to create the United States dollar. Okay? They can create as much as they want, whenever they want, for whatever they want. And they are the only ones in the world that are allowed to do it. The United States government is the currency issuer, the only ones that are allowed to create the United States dollar. So to the federal government, money it's no object. It's literally no object. They could pump out infinite money if they wanted to. It would be unbelievably foolish to do so and destructive to do so. But they could, just like you and I could commit infinite crimes every day. The football players could throw the ball out of the stadium every single play. We could play video games for the rest of our lives with never going to the bathroom or eating again. We can, but trying to actually do so would have very serious consequences. So we don't actually do these things. The government doesn't actually try and pump out money to an infinite scale because it would be disastrous. So we are a fiat currency. The United States is a fiat currency. In August of 1971, we sorry. Up until August of 1971, our money was based on gold. It was pegged to gold. So each ounce of gold was worth X numbers of dollars. And if you doubled the dollars, that would have the value, because now $2, double that would now be worth the same amount of gold. I didn't say that right, but you know what I mean. You reduce the value of the money if you double it when we're on a gold standard, because it is hooked to a specific amount of gold. In August of 1971, Nixon took us, and much of the world went off of the gold standard, and now we are a fiat currency. So we have a monopoly currency issuer, the federal government, and our money is not pegged to gold anymore. Japan, Australia, Canada, England, New Zealand, European Union, we are all fiat currencies. All of these, except for the European Union, went off of the gold standard in August 1971. European Union is obviously a more modern creation. So the federal government is the monopoly currency issuer. Everybody else is a user of the currency. Me and you, our families, our businesses, cities, states, even companies, and even other countries, Russia, China. We are all users of the United States dollar. We are currency users. So you and I are not allowed to create the currency. We could certainly try, and we'll go to prison for counterfeiting, federal prison for counterfeiting. So you and I require income before we can spend. We must get the money from somewhere else before we can spend. We are currency users. We use the currency. We can't create it. But the federal government can create as much as they want, whenever they want, for whatever they want, and they're the only ones in the world that are allowed to do it. So the federal government does not need income. They don't need income, because why would you need income if you can create money just like magic whenever you want to? So you don't need income in your own currency when you can create it whenever you want. So for the federal government is the only place in the world where the word create is exactly equal to the word spend. So the federal government, when they create money, that is exactly the same thing as saying that the federal government spends money into the economy. So the federal government spends money into the economy is exactly the same as saying that the federal government has created money. So if you don't need any income ever for any reason, then you don't need to borrow from China, even though all we ever hear is that we have to borrow from China. You don't need money from taxpayers, even though almost everybody believes that our federal taxes pay for all of these things. Infrastructure, healthcare should pay for those things, but it definitely pays for war and tax breaks and whatever. It doesn't pay for tax breaks, but you know what I mean. Federal taxes do not pay for anything. And excuse me. So people thinking that the federal taxes pay for things conflicts with the fact that the government doesn't need income. So which one of those is true? And obviously the Constitution tells us that Congress can create the money, so therefore federal taxes cannot pay for anything. Not just do not, they cannot pay for anything. So Ellis Winningham, federal taxes do not fund federal spending. Federal spending funds federal taxes. Say it again. Federal taxes do not fund federal spending. Federal spending funds federal taxes. Think about it. The beginning of the beginning, a phrase from economist Fidel Cabut. The beginning of the beginning. The government has been created. They have never created a dollar yet, though. Before they've created their first dollar, they cannot go to the people and say, you owe us $100 in taxes. What will they pay it in? They have never received a dollar. You have to receive money from the government in order to pay taxes. You must receive money from the government before you are able to pay taxes, which means that the federal government, federal spending funds federal taxes, not the other way around. We need their money. They don't need our money. So federal taxes are extremely important to the functioning of society, but it has nothing to do with paying for things. And that is very hard for many people to get into their heads. Well, where does it go? What is it used for? And we'll get into that. So the big lie. This is the big lie. And this lie is what every single other lie is based on. Every other one. And the big lie is that the federal government, the economy, the budget for the federal government has absolutely... Oh, no, the lie. The lie is that a budget for the federal government is exactly like a budget for me and you. So the economy of the federal government is exactly like the economy for me and you. That is the big lie. To say that it is different is the understatement of understatements. So the economy of the federal government, money to the federal government, a budget to the federal government, is nothing like the economy and money and a budget to me and you, and to states and municipalities and companies and other countries. It's nothing like that. We are currency users. They are a currency issuer. Okay. Actually, that's the end of my first section. Wow. That felt a lot faster. Just going to turn around now to my mess. Please don't tell me you just froze. Yes, it is. Yep. Nothing to see here. All right, my first section is over, and I can't believe it. That went way faster than it has before. So let me see if you have any questions. Give me a moment. I can hardly see anything. Okay, there's hardly any comments that I can see. Rob Baxter, we just passed the 47th anniversary of us coming off of the gold standard. August of 1971. Yep. I was born in November of 1971. Okay, our federal government, Rob Baxter. Our federal government is only constrained by the amount of goods and services that it is able to produce or import. not by money. We will get there. It's the difference between macroeconomics and microeconomics. Macroeconomics is what the federal government sees. Microeconomics is what everybody else sees. That's how it affects me and you. Macroeconomics is how it affects society as a whole. Okay. I don't see many comments. I'm just going to go on. Okay. Part 2. The Pony for All Act of 2018. Horse. Let's make it a little more friendly to non-progressives. The Horse for All Act of 2018. Every man, woman, and child in the entire country, we want to give them access to a free pony if they want one. So this is a ridiculous situation. This is a ridiculous thing to do, but let's take it seriously just for a few minutes. Okay, so every single man, woman, and child, we want to give them a horse. Access to a horse, a free horse, if they want one. What is it going... You and I are congressmen. And we are going to write this... we are going to write this law. Write this bill. And assumptions. We're going to forget about money. Money is infinite. Government is not corrupt. President said he's going to sign it. And we have access to the best people in the country to manage it. So there's no logistical problems, no chaos, because we have the best people in the world to make this happen. But you and I, our job is to write this bill so everybody in the country can have a horse. So currently, what's our population? We have 320 million people in the country around. And how many horses do we have? Roughly 500,000 horses. Roughly true. 320 million people, 500,000 horses. Clearly, it is not going to work at the moment. The demand for horses far outstrips supply. So if we tried to do it today, it would be a mess. It wouldn't work. People would be angry. Politicians would be... if we wrote a bill for tomorrow, people would be very angry at us. Producers would be under impossible pressure. It would be chaotic among these people. Not the whole economy, but it would be chaotic among these people. We're putting too much pressure, unrealistic pressure on the producers. We're giving people unrealistic expectations. So we have to change this. We don't want to lower the population by killing people. That would be silly. But we need to raise that population of horses. How do we do that? We have to make mommy and daddy horses do their things over and over and over again. That's how we do that. We have to reproduce horses so that 500,000 becomes 320 million. Maybe importing is part of that process too. We can get it from other countries. But we're just going to stick with reproduction. So we must get 500,000 ponies to become 320 million ponies. Horses. We must get 500,000 horses to become 320 million. They have to reproduce over and over again. How do we do this? How long is that going to take? So we have to consider the gestation period of a horse. I have no idea what it is. Let's pretend it's 9 months. Then we have to consider after birth how long until a mommy pony horse, trying to become less progressive focused. After it's born, how long can a mommy horse do its thing again? So we'll say 2 months. I have no idea. So 11 months total. Every 11 months, a mommy pony can go be pregnant again. Do that. So what is just the mathematical reality of how long it will take to get 500,000 to 320 million? Let's say 20 years. Feels roughly true. 20 years. Okay. So now we are on our way to expanding 500,000 horses to 320 million. And now that has very serious consequences. It has very serious repercussions. What are those? Our horse population is starting to explode. So we can feed 500,000 ponies and horses and take care of them, no problem. But now the population is exploding. And now we need more food. We need more water or supply of water. We need more horseshoes. We need more fencing. We need more shelters. We need people to take care of the land that they're on and take care of themselves. We need more veterinarians. If we need more horseshoes, we need more blacksmiths. We need more caretakers, veterinarians. We need more farms. We need to start putting these farms all across the country, which now we're talking about shipping and trucking. So this creates new industries. We need to educate new veterinarians. We need to educate new blacksmiths and caretakers and breeders and so on. So this is going to create an entirely new industry around these horses. And it is a wonderful benefit because there's going to be lots of jobs for people because of this new project, new law. And that's a wonderful thing, but that is not the point that I'm trying to make. That is just a great side benefit. So now we have all these things that are necessary. Horses are distributed around the country. We're on our way to having 320 million horses all around the country. And now it's time for people to start picking them up. But we can't just have them pick them up. I mean, we have the best people, so it's not a matter of disorganization because we have the best people to handle that. That's not the issue. The issue is that the people have no clue how to take care of a horse. Their houses are not prepared to handle a horse. So all of these things that we just went through, food, horseshoes, fencing, shelters, blacksmiths, caretakers, veterinarians, all of these things are now needed on a micro scale for every citizen in the country that wants to take advantage of this, that wants a horse. So we need to train these people of how to take care of a horse. And we need to get them all the supplies and services available to them all across the country. So creating 320 horses, you can have a pony out, but they're creating 320 million horses has enormous consequences and creates all of these industries. So the people pick up their horses at the Horses R Us and they take care of them. And finally, the last thing is disposal. When a horse dies, 320 million ponies, that really is a serious consideration now. Replacement, disposal, so on. So that's the whole life cycle from birth to death of the horse and also of this law. That's what it will take to make the Horse for All Act of 2018 a reality. That's what it will take. And it has no... We could be foolish and we could say, screw it. We are going to make this law, this Horse for All Act of 2018, we are going to make it happen in 5 years. I don't care what you say. I'm going to throw $10 trillion at it. And you are going to make this happen in 5 years. You're going to do it because the law says that you're going to do it in 5 years. The people are expecting for their horse to be ready in 5 years. They're expecting that to happen. We could be foolish in that way. We could throw $10 trillion, flood it into the economy, and force people to use that money, the breeders and so on, to use that money to make this law happen in 5 years. What would happen if we tried to do that? And the answer is, money doesn't change biological processes. A horse is not going to be birthed faster because of money. No mommy horse is going to be impressed by money enough to change her gestation period for her baby horse. It's not going to happen. Foal, right? The foal. Money doesn't change biological processes. Money doesn't change how fast it takes to educate all of these people that we will need. Money doesn't change how fast we can distribute all of these things around the country. It will take 20 years to do. There is no way to change that. And the point of what I'm saying is that money to the federal government doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much money you throw at this, because the real resources is what's important, is the only thing that's important, because you can't cheat real resources. Real resources can't change because of money and time. So real resources, let me see, do I have that? Oh, I have a better way of saying real resources. Raw materials, I forget. Anyway, I'll say it better next time. Raw materials, labor, technology, and time, that's it. Raw materials, labor, technology, and time. That's real resources. Those are the things that matter to the federal government. That's the only thing that matters to the federal government. They do not care about the money. So our productive capacity, our capacity to produce. A horse has an X gestation period, time, education. There's so much time that we have to educate people. That takes time, distribute around the country, so on. Our capacity to produce is our real resources, is what our real resources can handle. So, money doesn't matter to the federal government because humans don't follow rules. So we can say, oh, we have money and we're constrained by money, so we have to have some rules so that we don't spend it too fast, otherwise we'll have hyperinflation and all these things. But rules don't matter because humans don't follow rules. Humans do not follow rules. They cheat rules. So you can say, oh, well, we'll create more rules. We'll create better rules. But rules on top of rules on top of rules is no different. Humans do not follow rules. They just don't. And that's why real resources are the only things that matter, because you can't change real resources. You can't cheat real resources. Okay, so, one last point I just learned. If you threw $10 trillion at it and you made it happen in 5 years, what would genuinely happen? People would be angry because you said I was going to get it in 5 years and now I'm not. Suppliers would be in a terrible position because they're told to do something that is impossible to do. And politicians who said it would happen, the people are going to be very angry with them. But it is impossible to make chaos by flooding money into the economy. If you're smart, and if we're smart and we say this money must be used to implement this law, because if they can't produce horses this fast, then that money is just going to sit in their bank account. The government can create chaos by giving people $1 million each just to pay off their bills, or UBI, by just giving people money. That could cause economic chaos. But in the context of this situation, where our law is written well, aside from the stupid 5-year thing, that you must use this money in order to implement the law, it's not that it would cause chaos beyond people being angry, like I mentioned. It just simply wouldn't work. It is impossible. It's impossible to cause chaos if you put that the money must be used for the law. So that's a new thing I learned. But so going back to the very first question, what are taxes? What are federal taxes used for? Why do we collect federal taxes? And now we know it is not because they pay for anything, because they don't. Federal taxes do not pay for anything. We're not talking about state. We're not talking about municipal. Excuse me. The purpose of taxes. There's 3 major reasons for taxes that I'm going to talk about. The first is the purpose of taxes. And that is to drive the currency and drive the economy. And before you've ever heard of that term before, for those of you who have never heard of that term before, that likely means nothing. It likely means nothing. Drive the currency, drive the economy. That is the purpose of federal taxes. What does that mean? Well, let's talk about what the purpose of the purpose of a government. The purpose of a government is to compel the people to use the real resources at its disposal for the benefit of society. That's the purpose of a government. And money is the incentive that people are given in order to do it. So instead of putting a gun to people's heads, we give them money. The federal government gives them money, taxes some of it back, but they get to keep that money. They get to keep it. They can invest it, they can save it, they can spend it, they can buy what they need to buy to survive. So to drive the currency means that you make the money useful. And how do you do that? You force people to use the money. And how do you force them to use the money? By taxing them and by telling them that if you don't pay your federal taxes, you will go to jail. That's how you force the people to care about the money. Now they care about the United States dollar. So they might have cared before the government came in and said this, that they might, the 13 colonies, maybe they cared about the British pound. But now the government comes in and says, no more British pound. You now must pay taxes in the United States dollar. Here's some money to be in my army, to build my things, to build my buildings, grow my crops at the beginning of the country. Here is United States dollar. And you must use this to pay your taxes. So compelling people to pay taxes in the dollar and going to jail if they don't, that's what drives the currency and drives the economy. It forces people to use the dollar and to find a job to get more of those dollars. So that's the purpose of money. Here's the first use of taxes. I said money. That's the purpose of taxes. Now here's the first major use of taxes as a tool to do something else. And that is to control demand. So before we get into this, we need to define inflation. Inflation is a scare word that is thrown around very carelessly, purposefully as a scare word. Inflation is not when the price of bread goes up. Inflation is not when the price of horses go up. Inflation is not when the price of horses and all of the related industry goes up. That is not inflation. Inflation is only when every single product for sale under the United States dollar is going up and continues to go up. That's inflation. When everything gets more expensive and continues to get more expensive, which is another way of saying that the value of the dollar keeps going down and down and down. So it is a macroeconomic phenomenon. So control demand. In World War II, we temporarily went off the gold standard, just us, not other countries. We temporarily went off the gold standard during World War II. And all of the car companies took their resources, the real resources that they had, rubber, iron, steel, cloth, and instead of making new cars, they took those resources and put them into the war effort. They made tanks and planes and artillery and ships. They stopped making new cars completely. All of that production instead went to the war. So now there are no more new cars being made during the war. But the people, generally speaking, had the same amount of money in their wallets, in their bank accounts, and they had the same interest, same desire to purchase new cars. So now we have a problem. And it's a very serious problem. A lot of people want to buy new cars, and we have no new cars for them to purchase. So what do? There's only one of two solutions. You either increase demand, you either increase supply, or you decrease demand, or some combination of the two. During this particular situation, during World War II, it was impossible to increase supply because we genuinely needed to take all of our real resources and focus them on the war effort. New cars were just not as important. So we must decrease demand. We must. I mean, we can import, I guess, but we must decrease demand. We must either compel the people to stop buying cars, or we must entice the people to stop buying cars. So compel the people. We could tax them. We could make a law. We could threaten them, don't you dare or you'll be killed. That's compelling. We could entice them. We could find something that they want to buy more. We could come up with some product that's so attractive that people choose to buy that instead of buying cars. And that's what happened during World War II. Thank you to Kathleen Tremblay for this part that I'm about to say. This is what the United States did to solve this problem, to reduce demand for new cars. they offered the American people war bonds. So they appealed to the American people with patriotism, and they said, support the troops, support the war effort. That's what they advertised this as. Buy war bonds. And to them, it was like, so we don't have to be crushed with new cars because we don't have them to give you. So buy war bonds to support the troops and support the war effort. And that worked. People bought war bonds instead of buying new cars. So this is what happened. So let's say, for example, a war bond was 10 years and 5%. And you can choose any amount you want to buy. So let's say that we bought a $1,000 war bond, 10 years, 5% interest. So our money, we give $1,000 to the government, and then 10 years later, we get that $1,000 back, plus 5%, $50. So $1,050 in 10 years from now. So the incentive is patriotism and some profit. So that reduced demand and worked perfectly. I'm sure there were other tools too, but that was the major tool. Reduced demand, and now people weren't putting pressure on the auto industry that they couldn't handle. Our productive capacity could not handle that. So this is very similar to taxes. Taxes and war bonds remove money from the economy. That's the purpose of it. It removes money from the economy. Taxes and war bonds are similar in that way. They're different because war bonds are for 10 years. So the money, you give up the money for 10 years, and then it comes back to you at the end when it matures, plus some interest. Taxes is not 10 years. It is infinite years. So you never get it back. So you give up your money and you never get it back. And of course you don't get a bonus. But this is the mind-bending part. So we said at the beginning that the Congress writes a number into a bill, and then that bill is signed into law by the president. And that is when money is born. Just like a child drawing it on a piece of $1 trillion bill on a piece of construction paper, just like ticking up the numbers on a scoreboard, money is born. It is created out of thin air. The other side of it is when it's taxed and when it's with buying bonds. When you pay $1,000 in taxes, when you pay $1,000 in taxes, you write $1,000 on your tax return. I owe $1,000. You mail that to the government, and you, I guess, put a check there. And they put that tax return into a filing cabinet or into a folder on a computer. And they see $1,000, your name, that's how much they owe. And what that does, what that check does, what that tax return does, it authorizes the federal government through your bank to reach into your bank account and lower your bank account by $1,000. There is nothing done on their side. Nothing is done on their side. So you're not giving your money to the government. The money just disappears from your bank account and is gone forever. That's what happens with taxes. They don't do anything on their side. They don't hold that money. They don't use that money. Same with war bonds. You buy a $1,000 war bond, you purchase it, and you authorize the government to go into your bank account through your bank and lower your bank account balance by $1,000. They give you a piece of paper that says $1,000, your name, 10 years, 5%, 1955, 5%. And they write it down in their ledger or computer, your name, 1955, $1,000, 5%. They write it down, but they don't have that money. They don't have that money. They have just lowered your bank account by $1,000. The money goes away. So money is born when it's created by Congress, and it dies when you pay taxes or you buy a war bond. And with a war bond, it comes back to life when it matures. So that's hard for people to hear sometimes. Like they feel resentful all their whole lives. My taxes go to pay for stuff, and now you're telling me they don't? I feel cheated. What am I paying for? And so on. It's like they're taking their money and just putting it in some trash can and burning it on fire. I mean, that's sort of what it's like. money dies with taxes. And think about it. If money is born because they want it to be born, just created out of thin air, if taxes don't die, then we're going to gradually have infinite money, which is not going to work. It has to have another side. The born is the beginning of it. There has to be a mirror image of that in order to not accumulate infinite money. And I would love to have a conversation with a libertarian who says taxes are theft. But if taxes are theft, that means we're going to gradually have infinite money and the money is going to become useless and our government will collapse. So, so it is not accurate to say that the federal government has money, and it is not accurate to say that the federal government doesn't have money. When the federal government creates money, it is always to give to a currency user. They never hold that money for themselves. The purpose of a government is to compel the people to use the real resources at its disposal for the benefit of society, and money is the incentive that they give the people to do it, and they get to keep most of that for themselves, and they tax a portion of that to compel them to use the dollar to pay for stuff. Okay, the final use that we're going to talk about for taxes, federal taxes, only federal, is imposing moral decisions. So most of these examples that I'm about to say mostly happen on the state and municipal level. But the concept of it is totally solid, and things like it happen at the federal level. So I'm just going to go with this. So the federal government can raise taxes to discourage behavior. It could raise taxes on alcohol, drinking alcohol, on cigarettes, on gambling, on drugs. It can raise taxes on them in order to discourage people using them too much. We don't want to raise them so much that we stop them altogether, but we do want to raise it so that people don't do it to an addictive level. And the federal government doesn't care or doesn't focus on the individual. It's not like the federal government says, I don't want you to become addicted because that would be terrible for you and your family. The federal government says, I don't want the people to become addicted to alcohol or cigarettes or gambling or drugs, because that would affect the healthcare industry to a macroeconomic level. They only think of macroeconomics. They don't think of microeconomics, how would it affect an individual person. But if they do what's best for the macroeconomy, then that will indeed benefit individuals. It is not true the other way around necessarily. So we can raise taxes on vices, alcohol, gambling, so on. We can raise it some, just so that it's more expensive so that they don't reach an addictive level. We can raise taxes on activities that cause pollution a dramatic amount to stop it in its tracks, stop it dead in its tracks. We can raise it a lot. So we can choose the level that we want to discourage it. We can also, the opposite side, we can also lower taxes in order to encourage behavior. We can encourage, hold that question until I'm done, Keith, please. In case I lose it, I'm going to need you to tell me it again. We want to lower taxes to encourage behavior. So we want to encourage gym memberships. So we'll lower taxes on gym memberships. We want to encourage activities that cause lower pollution, lower electric cars, solar panels. We want to lower taxes on them, maybe even give a bonus, sort of a negative tax. So these things can encourage behavior. So back to something that to discourage behavior by raising taxes. So we want to tax the rich because we want to lower income inequality. Excuse me. We want to lower income inequality. I have no problem. We as a society could decide that we have no problem with being rich. You can be 300 times richer than everybody else, right? That's fine. That much money, just enjoy it. We won't tax you crazy, and just enjoy it. But above that threshold, we as a society could decide Let's say, whatever, $500 million. When you get above $500 million, the portion above $500 million, that means that you're starting to get wealthy, more rich, only by extracting off the well-being of others, by profiting off of our sickness, profiting off of our suffering, profiting off of our death. We can't have that. That is not what we want. What we as a society could decide that that's not what we want. And we are so far beyond that. We are so far beyond that. We now have people that are so rich that they can buy politicians and therefore can create the laws. And we as a society could decide that I don't want that either. And therefore we need to tax them to reduce their power. It's reducing their money, but really it's reducing their power, to stop them from being able to buy politicians, to stop them from being able to profit off of other people's suffering. But the important part here is, and which should make perfect sense, given everything that we've just spoken about, it is we do not tax the rich because we need their money. Not even that we shouldn't tax the rich because we need their money. We cannot tax the rich because we need their money. It is impossible to get money from anyone at the federal level. And it doesn't matter because the federal government can create as much as they want, whenever they want. You don't tax the rich because you need their money. And in the same way, you don't lower the military because you need their money, because we should be using that money for something else. That doesn't make economic sense. We should reduce the military because we are the bullies of the world. And I don't want to be the bullies of the world. We do need to reduce the military, but we can't reduce the military in order to get their money. That doesn't make economic sense. And as a quick aside from political corruption, what is stopping us from writing a $4.5 trillion check, giving it to the fossil fuel industry, and then telling them, you're done, close your doors, it's over. 1 year from now, you are out of a job. We buy the fossil fuel industry and shut them down permanently. What is stopping us from writing a $4.5 trillion bill, $4.5 trillion into a bill and creating it, giving it to them, shutting it down, and now we are forced to create a green economy. There is nothing stopping us except for political corruption. Okay. One more thing, and then I'm going to take my second break. Modern money is knowledge. It doesn't say whether to do something or not to do something. It doesn't say to tax the rich. It doesn't say to not tax the rich. It doesn't say how much to tax the rich or how much to not tax them. Modern money doesn't tell you to do or not do anything. It is knowledge. Modern money is the reality of how our economy actually functions, how it works. It only describes. It does not prescribe. Whether you learn modern money or not, whether or not you believe it, it is the reality. It is the truth. That's the definition of modern monetary theory. It is the truth of how our economy actually functions. So if someone studies medicine, they might choose to cure people, they might choose to do Nazi experiments, they might choose to never practice at all. You don't blame medicine. You don't blame medicine because someone chose to do terrible Nazi experiments on people. It's not the fault of medicine. Medicine didn't tell them to do that. Same thing with a socket wrench. You can unscrew stuff with a socket wrench. You can put it in your toolbox. You can throw it away. You can never use it again. You could unscrew stuff with it. Or you could beat people over the head with it. It is not the fault of the socket wrench that someone beats people over the head with it. It has nothing to do with it. There's no purpose in being angry with a socket wrench. I am never going to use a socket wrench again because this guy beat people over the head. That makes no sense. We should be angry at the person who chose to use it poorly. Same with modern money. Modern money is the reality of how our economy works. You can choose to use that knowledge to help the people, or screw the people, or just do nothing for the people. We have a government that chooses to use the knowledge of modern money to screw the people. And remember what we said at the beginning with the elevator pitch. MMT for the rich, MMT for the rich, rugged neoliberalism for the poor. The rich always remember about modern money when it comes to war and tax breaks and so on. They always forget about it when it comes to giving the people what they need. How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? MMT for the rich, rugged neoliberalism for the poor. You don't blame modern money because politicians try and screw us. You need to learn the rules so you can fight the cheaters. If you don't know the rules, you can't fight the cheaters. You can't fight the cheaters if you don't know the rules. These are the rules. Okay, so that is my part 2. Let's take another break. All right, I do feel like I'm going faster, but anyway, let's see. Keith, I believe you had a question. I'm going to see if it's still there. Or if you wouldn't mind just copying and pasting it so I can see it, because I don't. Okay. Yes. So Andrew Neal says, the solution to income inequality is to allow every child over 18 of age to own 1 square acre of land tax-free. Maybe we could talk about that. I've never heard of that before, but as far as I'm concerned, the most important thing is the federal job guarantee, period. That is the most important thing. A second most important thing is, to me, I believe, is to Medicare for all. That is the second most important thing. But the most important thing of all is a federal job guarantee. Excuse me. Yes, Keith. Oh, you were not talking to me? I was saying something about impose moral decisions, and I thought you were saying that's not totally correct. But I believe you're now saying that was not addressed to me. Okay. Carrie, you don't have many years left. You wish you could find the most effective way to contribute. Learn modern money. I don't know who you are, or if you do, maybe you already do. And start teaching it. That's how you do it. Or encourage people to go to people like me so they can learn it. That's how you can. That's certainly one way to contribute. People should be able to fall back on self-sufficiency if the government fails. Okay. I'm not sure how to respond to that. I think, yeah, so fine. So we could become more self-sufficient, but I think my first choice is to get corrupt politicians out of office, get good people in office, so they can use the knowledge of modern money to help the people and stop screwing the people. Medicare for all is different than universal health care, okay? I'm single payer, universal. We want Medicare for all. HR 676 has a serious flaw in it. Otherwise, is a beautiful bill. HR 676 is a beautiful bill with a fatal poison pill. You don't need to raise federal taxes for anything because you don't need income for anything. That hopefully is clear now. And HR 676 says it will allocate money as necessary, but it also has, we're going to raise this tax by this much, we're going to raise this tax by this much, we're going to raise this tax by this much. And that's basically guarantees to definitely HR 676 either will not pass, or if it does, it's going to be defeated as soon as the next president comes in. Period. Because raising taxes when it makes no economic sense to do so is going to really piss off people that are afraid of raised taxes, that don't want their taxes raised. They're going to get really resentful. It makes no sense to do it economically because they're not used for anything. But since it's in the bill, people who don't want their taxes raised are going to be really upset and resentful. And they're going to kill the bill. They're going to kill the bill. As soon as the next president comes in, he'll kill the bill. We need to get those tax cuts out of the bill, and then it's perfect. And that's what's going to, if we actually do that, then all hell's going to break loose. Because then Republicans couldn't play both sides. They could say, oh, I'm fighting for this bill for you. But knowing that these tax breaks are in there are going to kill it. But if those tax breaks aren't going to be in it, then they're going to say, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? Okay. Look at some more comments. Because oil is a huge... Oh, there's some conversation with oil or something. Oh, getting off fossil fuels. I think the only solution, I was just talking with, I believe it was Keith, how pretty much the only solution of getting off of fossil fuels is getting corrupt politicians out of office and writing a $4.5 trillion check and shutting down the fossil fuel industry, phasing them out over 2 years, training, doing all the just things. So all these fantastically rich people will be fantastically rich for the rest of their lives. Fine. And we'll save the planet, or no, not save the planet. We will save our ability to live on the planet in the process. Okay, I think I'm going to start part 3, the final part. Let's see. All right, part 3. Okay. Borrow, debt, deficit, surplus, balanced budget. These are all of the sub-lies that are based on the big lie. The big lie is that the federal government has the same economy, the same budget, the same view of money as you and I do. That's the big lie. To say that it's different is the understatement of understatements. The national debt. So you and I, we go to a bank and we say, I need to borrow $100. We get $100. We immediately owe them $100 plus interest. We are in debt to that bank. And if I don't pay it back, then they're going to do whatever it takes to get it back. I'm going to be in big trouble. But for the federal government, if you can create the money as much as you want, whenever you want, for whatever you want, and you're the only ones that are allowed to do it, do you need to borrow anything from anybody? No, you don't. You don't need to borrow from China. You don't need to borrow it from taxpayers. What does it even mean to be in debt if the federal government can create its own currency at a whim? What does it mean to be in debt if you are that person? And what does it mean? Who do you owe it to? So we hear our politicians say, we owe this debt, it's getting bigger and bigger, our grandchildren are going to be crushed, our country's going to go bankrupt, we owe this debt. Who do we owe it to? The bank will make a stink if we owe it to them. But we hear the politicians making a stink, but we never hear who it's owed to making a stink, ever. Why is that? And that is because it makes no sense to say that the federal government is in debt. It makes no sense to say that. There is no one that we owe it to. Yes, it is true that China has $5 trillion in treasury bills, $2 trillion in treasury bills. And it's just sitting there in a line in a spreadsheet. Money isn't there. It's just dead. But it's in they have a fancy $5 trillion bill, bond in China somewhere. And they can come here, I redeem it all. Fine. $5 trillion, here you go. I created the currency, I give it to you. What is the big deal? Now they have $5 trillion that they're going to spend on United States products. That's a good thing. And if it's not a good thing, we have a million tools to deal with it. So here is the definition of the national debt. So I'm going to give the technical definition first, and then I'm going to give an easy to understand definition. The technical definition of the national debt is all of the money that has been spent into the economy since the beginning of our country, since our country began, that has not yet been taxed back. All of the money, the national debt is all of the money that the federal government has spent into the economy since our country began that has not yet been taxed back. And now the easy to understand definition. The national debt is the total of every American citizen's, plus other countries, all currency users, China, Russia, so on. Every American citizen's investments, bank accounts, and wallets. It is our value. It's our value. I think it should be called not the national debt. I think it should be changed to be called our national value. A lot of other people think it should be called national savings. National debt is a very misleading term to use for this particular thing. And then what's the only way to pay off the national debt? If we truly want to pay it off, if we truly want to get it down to zero, to pay off the national debt means by definition that we have to empty out, zero out everyone's investments, everyone's bank accounts, and everyone's wallets. No one has value anymore. And even if we did that, who do we give it to? Deficit, balanced budget, and surplus. So at the beginning of the week, I budget $100 to take care of my family, get gas, food, take care of my kids. So I budget $100 at the beginning of the week. The end of the week, I spend $100. I was fiscally responsible. I budgeted perfectly. Got a little lucky. I was fiscally responsible. Budgeted 100, actually spent 100. Surplus. I budgeted 100, I only spent 85. I was even more responsible, maybe a little more lucky, but I was even more fiscally responsible. Now I have $15 extra that I can take my wife to a movie. Deficit. I budgeted $100 at the beginning of the week. I had to spend $120 at the end of the week. I had to dip into my savings. I had to get out a credit card. I had to take out a loan. I was not fiscally responsible. Artificial intelligence. I don't know why that's being brought up at the moment, but okay. So I was not fiscally responsible. $100. I budgeted 100. I had to spend 120. I was fiscally irresponsible. Okay? So that's me and you. Federal government. Welcome to opposite world. We always hear on the news, a balanced budget is a good thing. That is fiscally responsible. A surplus is an even better thing. That's fiscally responsible. A deficit is fiscally irresponsible. That's a bad thing for the federal government. Bill Clinton had a surplus for, I believe, the last 2 years of his term. He was hailed in the news as so responsible. He had a surplus. And soon after, a recession hit. I wonder why. So, a reminder, purpose of a government is to compel its people to use its real resources that it has, the real resources at its disposal, to do what's beneficial for society. Money is the incentive that people have to do it with, and taxes are the way that the government compels the people to do it. You go to jail if you don't pay taxes. Compel the people to use its real resources for the benefit of society. Money is the incentive to do it with. So a government would spend $100 into the economy. Wait, hold on a sec. Okay. So a balanced budget, federal government. The federal government spends $1 trillion into the economy. Let's say $100. The federal government spends $100 into the economy and to do what is beneficial for society, whatever, to implement some law or whatever it is. In April, it taxes all $100 of those, all $100 back. So the people are left with nothing. Nothing. And that is not what a government is meant to do. There is no incentive for the people to do what needs to be done for society. Excuse me. The people have no incentive to do anything, and that is no different than the government coming and putting a gun to your head. It is a slave society if we keep doing balanced budgets over and over again. You have no money to invest. You have no money to save. You have no money to spend. The only money that you have is all of your money is going to go exclusively to taxes. And you have no money left over to do anything else. Which means that you are going to have to get out loans. You're going to have to get out credit cards. You're going to have to dip into your savings to survive. Okay, so the federal government, surplus, fiscally responsible. Balanced budget is fiscally responsible. Surplus is fiscally responsible. Government spends $100 into the economy so to compel the people to do something beneficial to society. In April, it taxes 120 back. So now the people have nothing, and they have even less than nothing. So all of the money that the government gave them has to be paid for taxes, and not only that, they have to dip into their savings, into their value, or take out a loan or take out a credit card just to pay their taxes. And on top of that, they need to survive. So they have to go even further into their savings or even further into a credit card or a loan just to buy what is necessary to survive. So the people have less than nothing. They can't invest, they can't save, they can't spend. But that's fiscally responsible. Finally, deficit. The deficit. I got to get rid of these comments because these comments have absolutely nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Okay, deficit. Government spends $100 into the economy to do what's necessary, so the people do what's necessary for society, and they tax $30 back. Now the people have $70 that they can spend, that they can invest, that they can have in their wallet. Some of that the 30 they use for taxes. So they have 70 left to spend and invest and save. They have plenty of money to survive. They have incentive to do what the government asks them to do. There is much less pressure to take out loans and to use your credit card. So a deficit is not just important. A deficit is critical to the functioning of our society, because without a deficit, the people get no value, have no value. The debt is just the deficit year after year after year after year. It's the sum total of all of our deficits. The debt is the total of our deficits since the beginning of our society, aside from the taxes. If we do not have a deficit, we do not have a society. Certainly not a society that I want to live in, because then we're talking about slaves and guns to the heads. A deficit is our national income, and the debt is our national value. But they call the deficit fiscally irresponsible. It is fiscally irresponsible to give the people value. Okay. Social Security. We hear our Social Security is going to go broke by 2030. 3 years earlier than we expected. People want to steal from Social Security. People want to borrow. We have to borrow from Social Security. We have to lower benefits. But the Social Security is a federal program. All federal programs are funded by the federal government. The federal government can create whatever money it wants, however much it wants, whenever it wants, for whatever it wants. So no federal program has a bucket of money that can be emptied in order to go broke, that can be stolen from. There is no money, there is no bucket of money to be stolen from. There is no money to steal. There is no money to go broke. There is no money to borrow. Because when benefits are created for the people, for senior citizens, when benefits are paid to senior citizens, that currency is created each time. How can something like that go broke? There's certainly no real resource constraint that's stopping us from paying our senior citizens. So to say that Social Security is going to go broke is not economically accurate. However, it is wonderful scaremongering to make the people fear that their Social Security is going broke, so that in 5 years from now, we can look back and we can say, oh, Social Security is broke. See, I told you, I've been telling you for 10 years. Now we have to privatize it. And what a coincidence. I'm going to get to profit off of it too. That is sabotaging. That's how we sabotage federal programs. Any programs. You defund them. You sabotage them. And then years later, you look back and you say, oh, it's broken. We have to privatize it. Good coincidence. I get to profit off of it. The only way to defund Social Security, the only way for Social Security to go broke, and this is true with any federal program, is if Congress creates a law. No, if Congress changes the Social Security law to compel, to force the Social Security Administration to give less and less benefits. That's the only way it can go broke, is if our Congress chooses for it to go broke. That's the only way. There is no economic reason, no real resource reason for it to go broke. It goes broke because they want it to go broke so they can profit off of us and control us. Okay. Final points. I think this is part 3, pretty sure. Money is not a thing. It's not a physical thing. Money is a unit of measurement. Dollar, pound, yen, Australian dollar. All of these can be exchanged for each other. X dollars equals Y pounds. This is no different than quarts and gallons and milliliters. Milliliters can be exchanged for quarts. Certain number of milliliters can be exchanged for quarts. Pound, kilogram, ton. Inches, centimeters, miles, kilometers. The distance between Philadelphia and Chicago is X inches. You don't run out of inches. That doesn't make sense. It is a unit of measurement. And the same thing with the dollar. Same thing with money. It is a unit of measurement for debts and for obligations. And for things, products. Okay. Racism. Racism is a tool to tear the people apart. That's all it is. Xenophobia is a tool to tear the people apart. Be angry at the powerless immigrant because they're stealing our jobs. Don't be angry at the powerful person that chose to hire them instead of an American, screwing everybody. Be angry at the powerless person. Xenophobia. Classism. You don't have as much money than me. You don't have as much money as I do. Therefore, you are not as good as me. Classism is a tool to tear the people apart. There's plenty of others. Economic ignorance is a tool to tear the people apart. We are taught the perfect storm of information to fight so everybody fights everybody. We as modern people who know modern money, we fight against all these people who don't believe in modern money and therefore believe that the debt is scary, that the deficit is irresponsible, and that the surplus is responsible, and that I want to raise my taxes because I want my taxes to go for healthcare. I don't want it to go to the military. I want it to go to the healthcare for everybody. I'm a good person. I want everybody to have healthcare. But our taxes don't need to go up. And so what happens? We say, I want my taxes to go up so everybody can have health care. And then this enormous population of people that don't want their taxes to go up say, I don't care what you want. I will not let you raise my taxes. I am against it, just in principle. I would like health care. I like education, but not if it raises my taxes. And it will raise my taxes, and therefore I'm against it. I am terrified of raised taxes. I am terrified that I'm going to go bankrupt. I am terrified that my family is going to go bankrupt. I'm terrified that the country is going to go bankrupt. Therefore, I am against your program no matter what it is. even though it makes no sense to be that way. There's no sense in raising taxes in order to pay for federal programs. We don't need to do that. We can't do that. We can't get their money. It's impossible. The federal government doesn't have any money, doesn't need any income. That's the big lie, that they need income. And this H.R. 676, perfect bill, wonderful bill. And it says we're going to raise taxes by this, we're going to raise taxes by this, we're going to raise taxes by this, and we'll allocate what's necessary. They don't need to raise taxes. It's in there to kill it, to encourage people to fight against each other, so they're resentful when it passes. We are angry at the rich. We need their money. We must take it from them, or we must beg for it. Hopefully they will be charitable and give it to us. So it pits us, not necessarily against the rich. It pits us against those who think that success shouldn't be penalized. How dare you penalize success? Who do you think makes the jobs anyway? It pits us against each other. When that doesn't even make economic sense. You can't get the money from the rich. We need to tax the rich. We need to tax them to reduce income inequality. It is critical to do so. I, as a progressive, say that. Modern money doesn't. I do. We must tax the rich. We must reduce the military, but we can't get their money. But people will say, oh, how dare you penalize success? You want to take money from the rich? Who creates the jobs anyway? We must reduce the military. Oh, how dare you jeopardize our troops? How dare you jeopardize our national security? I am against it, even though we don't need their money to have any federal programs at all. We don't need it. It tears the people apart. Back to the people who are afraid of raised taxes. Flat Earth. They are afraid of falling off the economic cliff. They are afraid of falling off the edge of the earth. They know that taxes pay for things, and they won't even consider the possibility. They won't even put their foot into the boat because they are so convinced that the world is flat and they will fall off the edge of the earth. We tell them, oh, there's no edge. And people with modern money, we say there's not only no edge, it's completely round. We don't have to anything to worry about at all. And they won't even set their foot into the boat because they are convinced that it's true. So everybody fights against everybody. Even the progressive media, who does almost everything right. But when it comes to actually getting these things, they talk about the debt. They talk about the deficit. They waste their time. Not just progressive media. Most Americans waste their time on the debt and the deficit and all of these scaremongering. We waste our time and we use scaremongering. So it's scary and it wastes our time. So instead, and even Bernie Sanders says we must tax the rich in order to have infrastructure. They must pay their fair share. Even Bernie Sanders. I believe that he understands modern money. I believe that he has no clue on how to politically deal with it, or it's just an incredibly difficult situation. So we as progressives, I as a progressive, most progressives say, this is why the world is horrible, because we don't have healthcare. This is why it's horrible not to have healthcare. Here's like a wonderful, horrible example of why, what it's like. And then this is what it's like to have healthcare. This is what this healthcare program should look like. This is what it would be if we had it. So we can envision the society that we deserve to have. But when it actually comes to getting it, going onto the halls of Congress and saying, I demand Medicare for all tomorrow. I demand it. You must give it to me. And then they turn around and they say, oh, I wish I could give it to you. I know how much you want it. I know how much you need it. I know how much it would alleviate your suffering. I really, really do. But how are you going to pay for it? How are we going to do it? I can't do it. There's all the debt and the deficit and money and fiscally responsible. It is out of my control. I can't give it to you. I want to, but I can't because of all these external financial constraints, which completely feeds in, which is promoting the big lie that the federal government is the same as you and me, that they require income before they can spend. Doesn't make economic sense, but it is perfect for scaremongering and for scaring the people into fearing that what we need to survive will cause economic chaos. So they turn to us and they say, how are you going to pay for it? And we are suckered into going back and actually trying to figure out how we're going to pay for it. Get it from the rich, reduce the military. We'll raise our taxes on this and not on this, and so on and so on. We are wasting our time fighting over something that makes no economic sense. We are wasting our time figuring out, determining something that makes no economic sense. So, final point and then my final conclusion. Medicare for all. Why do we not have Medicare for all? Without it, we are chained to our jobs. We can't leave our jobs because if we do, we won't have health insurance. A lot of people will not have health insurance for their families. So they will be incredibly vulnerable. So they have to stay at their jobs. And this allows the private insurance industries to profit off of our sickness and our suffering and our death. And that's horrible. And that's a big deal for them. They want to profit off of that. But that's not it. What's even bigger is that we can't stand up to our bosses, because if we do, they'll say, there's 1,000 people like you. I dare you to stand up to me. There's 1,000 people like you. And if I pick one of those 1,000 people, you're out on the street and your family doesn't have health care. So we can't stand up to the bosses. People don't have power to stand up to the powerful, to the bosses. But even more than that, we can't leave our jobs because of these things, and we can't afford to run for office and take over their positions and become a good faith government, kick them out of office. That, I believe, is why we don't have Medicare for all and a lot of these federal programs. Not because they want to profit off of us, but not only because they want to profit off of us, but mostly because they want to keep us powerless. Power is relative. Caitlin Johnstone taught me this. Power is relative. It is impossible to stay powerful unless you actively keep everybody else powerless. And Medicare for all, keeping Medicare for all from the people on a federal job guarantee, keeps us powerless. It makes it impossible. The second we get Medicare for all, a large amount of power shifts immediately, instantaneously from the powerful to us. Federal job guarantee. The second we get a federal job guarantee, a large amount of power immediately shifts from powerful to us. Immediately. And we don't need to fight the powerful. We don't need to get their money. That makes no economic sense. We don't need to fight the powerful. We need to stop fighting each other. We don't need to take power from the powerful. We need to empower each other. And for me, that is to teach modern money. Excuse me, my little boy's looking at me. I'm sorry, Jacob, I really need him not to be here right now, please. Please, I'm asking you, I'm telling you to go over there. I'm talking with a lot of people right now. If you want to come in here, come and give me a quick kiss, and then you got to go away. Come here. Give me a quick kiss. You can say hello, and then you got to go away. Goodbye. Bye. Say hello.
Hi.
All right, bye. Goodbye. Now go to the other room, please. I forgot what I was saying. Yeah, we need to empower each other. We don't need to take power from the powerful. We need to empower each other. And for me, that means teaching people modern money. So we stop falling for these tricks of being fearful because what we need to survive is going to cause economic chaos. And wasting our time, much of our time, on determining how we're going to pay for things. Because we don't need to pay for things. How we pay for things is that the government chooses to pay for it. Period. If we have the real resources to do it, we do it. Period. So, conclusion. The masters of the universe and their politician employees use the big lie to hide the fact. They hide behind the big lie to hide the fact that they just don't want to give us these things. They pretend that they can't, but they want to. when the truth is that they actually just don't want to, because our politicians are paid to not want to. So the answer for the pay for question, when we go to Congress and we say, I demand Medicare for all, single payer health care. Well, I demand it tomorrow. I demand it now. And they say, how are you going to pay for it? And this is the technical, I already gave the technical answer, because the government wants to, and they'll create the currency to do so, as long as we have a real resources to do it, which clearly for Medicare for all we do. But here's the answer that I recommend giving. How are you going to pay for it? The federal politician tells us. This is the answer. By getting you out of office and replacing you with someone who will never ask that question again, and instead will just do whatever it takes to get the job done. And meanwhile, we spend 100% of our time and our energy making that politician's life a living hell until they either give it to us or they get out of office. That's what we need to do. So until we stop demanding things from a position of economic ignorance, we will never get it, ever. And that's why, to me, learning modern money is so important. We don't want to be angry at modern money. We don't want to choose to not learn modern money because of the pain that we feel, the anxiety that we feel because of how our politicians use that knowledge to screw us. We must learn the rules so we can start fighting the cheaters and the abusers. Modern money is the rules. The problem is the politicians, not the knowledge. The end. How did I do? And then I turned it around again. I actually think I probably was a little quicker than normal. That's my goal, to get a little faster. This was definitely better than before. And I'll do better next week. Okay, let's see. Any more comments? If there are any comments earlier, I can't see them. So if there are any good comments that I might want to address, that you think I might want to address, I would appreciate your copying them and pasting them in again so I can see them now. This only shows me a good 15, 20 comments. So if there's something good up above, please copy it and paste it down and let me know who. Okay. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Tax sugar at 500% its current rate and allocate funds to healthcare for all. Interesting. Okay. I'm getting the impression that Andrew is talking about things that have nothing to do with what I'm talking about. We all need to build floating cities, live in international waters. Look up Dr. Wallach, 91 essential minerals. What is this? What are you doing here, Andrew? I don't understand. Okay. Yeah, Keith, I mean, anybody, if you have feedback on improving the accuracy or the subtleties or whatever, I really want to know that. Like, that's my primary goal. I want to get it shorter, but that's my secondary goal. My primary goal is to get this better accuracy-wise and subtlety-wise and stuff like that. If you have input, I really would like to know it. I really would. I can sense that I'm, more memorizing and being quicker with that. And I can feel for the first time that I've significantly shortened it, and next week will be better. But easily accuracy. So, okay. Yeah, Andrew, I don't understand why you're here. Okay. We can be angry at the rich for influencing politicians to induce the population into austerity. Ray Whitaker. Our politicians are bribed to economically dumb down the populace. Have you ever listened to Paul Ryan? Yeah, I think the powers, the masters of the universe and the leaders of the Congress, the top people, I think it's impossible for them not to know it. Because you cannot screw the people as hard as we have been screwed for as long as we have been screwed if you don't know the rules, if you don't know the truth. And you cannot keep up with a web of lies as elaborate as this one is if you don't know the truth. So I think it is impossible that the true masters of the universe and the top people in Congress don't know this. I think they must know this. A Democratic candidate might not know it, and that's perfectly reasonable. They haven't been in Congress yet. They haven't worked at a federal level yet. But the Democratic Party absolutely knows it, and they could, if they wanted to, reach out to that candidate and say, stop being economically inaccurate. But they don't. They don't do that. So therefore, they are actively promoting economic ignorance. They are passively allowing the candidate who doesn't know it for completely innocent reasons to perpetuate it and allowing that to happen. Okay. Thank you, Ray. I appreciate that. Taxes do not fund federal spending, Kathy Bassett says, and she is absolutely right. I am really going to be interested in looking at this completely different conversation. It's really weird. Okay. All right. I don't see any other comments, or I'm sure there are, but I don't see them. That's the one thing that really stinks about this. I want to be able to give feedback to people, and it's not letting me see them. It really stinks. Okay. All right. I don't see anything else. Thank you very much. I'm planning on doing this again, and I hope to get it a little bit faster. I think I'm starting to see little pieces that should be cut. It's all interesting and important, but anyway. So thanks for being with me. If you have feedback, let me know. Am I just on Facebook or am I on YouTube too? I'm just on Facebook right now. I only use my phone. For more than 2.5 years, I've only used my phone for videos, ever. I've never done it on my computer, my desktop. And I can do it on my iPad, but that's really the same thing. Real Progressives, however, puts it on YouTube. They put it on YouTube. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. I look forward to reading through the comments more thoroughly. Carrie, thank you for being with me, for the kind words. You're welcome. This is what it's about. Teaching people, getting better at teaching people. I should say, I am going to be on Ron Placone's show on Thursday. I was on last week or this past week, and we had a little rough spot, so we just decided to do it over again. We're going to doing it over again on Thursday, and I wanted to just, as a surprise, month and a half ago, Ron Placone started a podcast, and he released his theme song to his patrons, and that theme song struck me. And in my former life, pre-Bernie, I am a trained singer. And so I heard that, and I was immediately struck by it. 2 hours after he dropped that theme song, I sent him back a version with my harmony on top of it. And now that harmony is actually used in his podcast. So Ron Placone, Get Your News On with Ron, the podcast. If you listen to the theme song at the beginning of any episode, the harmony is me. Pretty cool. That was pretty exciting, actually. So, so I'll be on Ron Placone on Thursday. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully see you next week. And that's it.